Hello, all. Dr. Aimie, welcome.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. And so trauma is one of those things that I feel like we don't talk about enough, but in the adrenal world and what I do, I mean, trauma is so intertwined in that because obviously anytime you have any event and it kicks off, the sympathetic nervous system, it causes problems with your health. And then when you have all this past stuff that's in your subconscious or stuff that you've worked throughout your life, then it starts triggering cortisol and sympathetic response, even when you're not thinking about it. And then people end up with all these symptoms. And I think when a lot of people talk about trauma, and this is what I kind of want to dive in with you. And by the way, guys, this is a live Q&A. So if you have questions along the way, throw them out there. And I love to see hearts and happiness. And I love what we're talking about. Like, give me feedback. I guess I need the validation. Just give me something. But one of the things with trauma that I think people misunderstand, and I'd love to have you talk about, is I think people think it has to be major. Like trauma has to be, this huge event where like your life was ripped out from under you. But as I've learned working through my trauma, it doesn't have to be that. Trauma could be something so small that your brain just interpreted as a threat, right? So can we talk about that?
I'd love to talk about that because you're right. There's a lot of myths that we need to bust about trauma because there are many people like me, and it sounds like you, who we look back at our life and we're like, well, my life has been relatively good compared to other people that I know. Who am I to complain? Yeah. And so we minimize the impact that our experiences have had on our body. And I had an experience in 2014 where I burnt out and I was having significant health problems at the time. And that was the first time that it really hit me like, oh, wait a second. I have trauma. And specifically, my body is holding on to that trauma and it's making me sick. And so many people are not making those connections to realize, oh, my body does give me messages. I can look at my physical health and say, let's get curious about this because these symptoms are connected with trauma, which then means we need to go back and redefine trauma because the definition then is not this big bad event, because then we're all sitting around being like, well, do I qualify? Does this event qualify? Is this bad enough? Is this big enough? Do I qualify? It's like, no, we're playing the wrong game. We need to actually redefine what trauma is for the body.
Yeah, I think, and I think the impact that this is awesome. I love this conversation, by the way. Like, I literally could go live with you for like 3 hours. Let's not do that. Just want to remind everyone we are live. Ask questions, throw them out there because Dr. Aimie is the best with trauma. And I know that you guys have questions about this because this whole concept of what is trauma, how does it affect our body? What type of symptoms could people have? So in your practice, what do you see people like by the time they get to you? Now, granted, by the time they get to you, they've probably worked through someone else, right? Like maybe they have symptoms, nobody's finding anything, they're not really sure what's going on, or they have identified the trauma. Most of the time when people come to you, do they know that they've had trauma, or are they still just saying there must be something in here somewhere that I'm missing, and can you help me find the trauma?
I want to actually go back to when I first started seeing this in my patients.
Okay.
Because if you're asking that question, the first time that I started seeing it in all of my patients was when I was in surgery. So I did about 4 years of general surgery residency, not the place where people come to talk about their traumas in their life. But as I'm looking at my patients and I'm hearing what they're saying, I'm hearing how they talk about themselves.
Yeah.
I'm hearing how they talk about how they need to survive and push through and cope. And I'm coming out of the experience of just having foster parented and adopted, and then had to find all of the answers for my son for 6 years because it took me that long to find the answers. So that was the context that I had. I'd always had a dual life. One was my medical training, and then I'd come home where I had now a son who had such severe attachment and trust issues that his trauma was all over the place all the time.
Yeah.
And I had seen that as being so extreme that, again, that's reserved for those people who had that level of trauma that he had when he was young. But here's what happened, Trisha, is that one day he did something in order to keep me from connecting with him, to keep me from actually loving him, because for him, love was scary.
Yeah.
And it struck me that I'm like, shoot, I think I do that. I think I push people away. I think I guard my heart. I think that I leave some social events a little early with a good excuse of it's late, I should go to bed, when actually it's getting a little too personal for me. It's getting a little too vulnerable. They might see the real me, and if they saw the real me, they might not like me. So let me leave now so that they only see the nice things about me in my life that I want them to see, but not this other stuff that I think is messy that they wouldn't like. And so I
can so relate to that. And I know everyone listening can relate to that. We don't want to show our true, authentic selves. I didn't for a very long time show who I was. And I still probably don't show. I'm probably at 99%, which is freaking
given where you came from, yes, right? Because that was your life. You had to perform.
All the time.
You had to look good. Your worth, Lisa, as I understand from what you've shared about your mom and your family, your worth was tied to how good do you look? How well did you perform? How big was your smile? And yet that's, for you as a child, that would have been like, yeah, I can't show the real me.
100%.
I always have to be in this mode.
And that's trauma, right? Even though it doesn't feel like that. So I just find it so interesting that the world brought you a son who had trauma around what you yourself needed to work on. And it makes me smile and tear up a little bit, because like that's what the world does. It brings us those lessons and we fight against it and we think we can figure it out in our conscious brain, but these lessons are being brought to us so that you can now propel yourself to the next level. And I just think it's beautiful. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I was just like, oh my God, how beautiful. And I know people can relate with that. You know, you're leaving the party because you don't want someone to really see who you are. You're like, okay, I've talked enough today. I gotta get out of here. If you guys are relating, by the way, put comments in for me. Okay. Let me know you're out there. This platform is harder. I don't get all the hearts and stuff that I used to get. I got to change that. But okay. So you have this son, you start to realize that you have stuff to work through. And
that's when I started seeing this in my patients. And I'm like, oh, wait a second. They have fears that they are letting, or unconsciously, right? But these fears are driving their health. I can see the connection now because of my personal life. They haven't yet seen that connection. And yet here I am. And some of this was chronic digestive problems coming in for surgery. Some of these were young kids. And I remember there being a kid who was also adopted. And we ended up even doing a laparoscopy on him because we couldn't find the root of his abdominal pain, and eventually actually went in because he was complaining of so much pain. We didn't find anything, of course. And that's just it, right? Like we somehow think that our emotions live in one world. And our physical health lays in another world. So that if I'm having physical pain, it is not being driven by emotions. And the reality is, here goes a myth buster. The reality is we are one human being. It's impossible to try to separate one aspect of ourselves from another. And in fact, the physical health symptoms that we have, whether that's pain or fatigue or IBS or brain fog, all of that is going to both affect how we feel about ourselves, and how we feel about ourselves is going to drive those symptoms.
Yeah. And we see that in our world all the time.
All the time.
And, I get a lot of pushback, not calling you men out. I love you all, but I get a lot of pushback from my male patients often, or people that I talk to, and I go, look, I think we've ruled this out. I think your pain, we need to start looking into the emotional aspect of this. And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, no, I really do, because we're fortunate enough to see these transformations all the time. I interview people all the time that, tried everything for whatever. And then it came down to an emotional thing that they released. And when they released it, they felt better. I got rid of shoulder pain by releasing my throat chakra in one ceremony, and I wasn't even using any substances. That was just me. That was just using my breath. Right. And I think we forget that. I do see a question. So let me grab those, because I want you guys to start jumping out the questions here for Dr. Aimie. This topic is so fascinating to me. It's so awesome. And by the way, we're going to talk about your book, because you have a book coming out. So you got to check it out. Do you find that emotions settle in different places in different people? I see a lot of emotions localizing in the chest. What are your thoughts?
Ooh, such a great question.
Great question.
And the answer, like many questions, is multi-layered. And so we can go as superficial as we want, and we can go as deep as we want. The superficial answer is yes. Different emotions, different fears can show up in different places in different people. Like for you, Trisha, you just mentioned your throat, right? The throat is a common place. However, it will be more unique to those who didn't feel like they could speak up for what they needed, what they wanted, their authentic self. But let's go to the chest, because this person brought up the chest. Now, what is fascinating about the trauma response is how it takes our breath away. And so symptoms are going to show up in our chest. Let's dive a little deeper into that. There is a difference between stress mode and trauma mode. Stress mode, as you mentioned earlier, is driven by the sympathetic nervous system. And when we are driven by sympathetic nervous system, the adrenaline that's being pumped out is going to make us breathe faster. Why? Because we're likely running, we're likely fighting. That's the purpose of the stress response, is to fight or flight. Many people are familiar with that term. What is not as familiar is the understanding of the freeze. So here's another myth buster. Fight, flight, or freeze are not the same thing. It is not the same response. Fight or flight is a stress response. Freeze is a trauma response. And why we freeze is because, in my book, I call it, we hit the wall. We hit the wall in the sense that I'm running, I'm trying to overcome this danger, get away, get safe again. And rather than being successful, I come to a wall. And at that wall, what happens is that I am now trapped. Yeah. I'm powerless, and I feel all so very alone. That is the trigger for the freeze response. If that does not happen, we do not go into freeze. We stay in fight mode. We stay in flight mode. And so there's a very specific trigger for when the body shifts survival mechanisms. And the survival mechanism of the freeze says, if I stop, the monster might go away. If I stop, the monster might not see me. Yeah. And if you think about in the animal kingdom, how do animals detect each other? Prey and predator. How does the predator detect the prey? Warmth is one of them. Warmth, right? And so actually what happens in the trauma response, which relates to a lot of your work, our metabolism shuts down. Like literally our metabolism shuts down. So for those people who are trying to lose weight, stay out of the trauma response, because it will be impossible when your body is in that level of survival mode and it is shutting down your metabolism, and there's no amount of logic or willpower or dieting or supplements or exercise that will change your body's survival strategy in that moment.
Did you guys hear that? Losing weight is not about not eating, and like you have to change the nervous system to get the metabolism moving? I just want to bring that out because that's a common question. And everyone's like, I'm doing everything right. I'm like, no, you're not.
You're missing the driver, right? So
Yeah.
I talk about the nervous system as the 3 modes of a car, where if we are in the mode, trauma mode is where we are stopped. We've got the emergency brake on. Like that is not when we are going to be losing weight. We are not going to be having a healthy metabolism. Everything in our body will start to fall apart because we're stopped. We've got the emergency brake on.
Yeah.
If we have our foot on the gas pedal, that's the stress mode. And that's also not when we are in our best health. We may lose weight because we're in stress mode. And sometimes for a lot of people, the stress will make them a little nauseated. They'll eat less. They are burning their metabolism, but it's also unsustainable. So unless they know how to complete that stress response, they're going to go into the trauma response. And then
they have to fill the gas tank, right?
Exactly.
You're going to run out of gas. Yeah.
When you run out of gas, your body's going to go into the trauma response. There's nothing you can do about it. It will go into the trauma response when you run out of gas. So if you really want to be what I call in your best health and your best self, we need to spend more of our time in parasympathetic or ventral vagal for those who might know polyvagal theory. I call it calm, alive state. I'm calm because I'm feeling safe and secure. And yet I'm alive. It's not I'm calm only because I'm sitting on the beach drinking a margarita. No, I'm calm, but yet I'm also very alive. I'm engaged. I'm open. I'm present. I'm curious. I'm creative. So calm, alive is when our body will be in its best health naturally without us needing to do anything else. It will just naturally be in its best health. So as we look at what then triggers that freeze response, what would make our body throw on the emergency brake and bring everything to a stop? It's when we feel trapped.
Yeah.
It's when we feel powerless. It's when we feel all alone. And that is the definition then of a trauma, Trisha.
That is.
Look back at our life and say, when have I felt that way? I'm not looking for a big event anymore. I'm looking for when did I feel trapped, powerless, and alone? And when we look at our past through that lens, many people can look through a number of times that they felt that way.
Yeah. Are you guys resonating? Are you tracking with this? Give me some comments because I so resonate with that. And I think I see that so often. That is the definition of trauma. It's how you feel. Like the event is kind of irrelevant, right? It's really, how did that moment make you feel? Does everyone, are you guys loving this? Give me some feedback. Where are you guys today? I do have another question. I am going to read it. I do see it. Where are the rest of you? Come on, give me something. Facebook, YouTube, what do we have over there? I see you're out there. I see the numbers out there. I know you're there. So give me something so that we can keep this going. It's so interesting. This whole topic is so interesting because it really, I think, helps people understand how intricate our mind and our thoughts and our feelings are with our body. And one of the things you were talking about with the chest, when you were answering the question on that, and you were talking about how it takes our breath away, there are going to be symptoms there. I started thinking, and the heart chakra. I had so much grief, so much loss. And to your point, every time I lost another person, which has been a lot, every time I lost another person, I felt more and more alone. I felt more and more lost. I felt more like, who am I? And then when the throat chakra is cut off and I'm not letting myself be my authentic self, and then everyone around me is going away, you think, I'm not good enough to speak up. I'm not good enough to do this or that. Even though consciously, I'm like, of course I'm good enough. Subconsciously, I was like, I'm not good enough because when I was left alone as a child, a ton, because I'm an independent, anyone who knows me, like, watch out, right?
This is true. That was the truth that just dropped.
I'm going to do what I want to do, right? But I'm an only child and I grew up very alone and had to be adult very young. So I felt very alone even then. And it was every time I lost someone, and I didn't have chest symptoms, but I had heart chakra type symptoms like severe depression, feeling very alone, very lost, those types of things. And obviously what's between the heart and the head, because the head is saying, you're good, you're fine, just power through, you got this, you're a strong woman, you can do it, blah, 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 right? So this is moving and this is moving, but what's right here? Right. And the energy was getting stuck. And I think you can look at trauma in so many different ways. In my opinion, you can look at like what you're talking about with the physiology of it, the biology of it. We can look at the logical part of our brain that tells us what it is. And then we also have to look at this energetic component that we don't have control over until we recognize it, honor it, trust it, and release it. Right?
Yeah, the impact of trauma on all levels has been minimized.
Yeah. Let me see what this question is. Okay. Trauma is so much more common than we realize. We agree. Right. What's been your greatest success in releasing physical symptoms after tackling someone's trauma? This is so fascinating. So do you have a great success story that comes to mind on this? Besides maybe your son or you, but do you have a story to share?
Trisha, this is why I do what I do, because I have seen so much change in people, even degrees of change that surprised me, given their background, given what they were struggling with, that now I'm at the place where I'm like, there's hope for everyone. Oh, but Dr. Aimie, you don't know my story. And I'm like, you know what? Because this is nervous system work, as long as you're breathing, there's hope. Once you're not breathing anymore, there's not much I can do. But as long as you're breathing, there's hope, because we can shift your nervous system. And we've already talked about this. It's the state of your nervous system. It generates how you feel. It generates the thoughts that you have. It generates your physical health symptoms. And so when we can learn, and that's what I do now, is I teach people how to shift their own nervous system state, because I don't want them to have to depend on a practitioner. I don't want them to have to depend on a therapist. I don't even want them to have to depend on me. Mm-hmm. I want them to have the skills, because here's what they're going to need to be able to do. They have a thought. They start to panic. I need them to have a tool right now.
Yeah.
I don't need them to be able to call their therapist and make an appointment for the next week. Mm-hmm. I need them to be able to shift their nervous system back to a place of safety within 60 seconds. Yep. And so when you're asking like, well, what's the story of hope? That right there. So when I was working with my patients, and by now I was out of surgery, and because of this work, I was inspired to shift my career into preventive medicine and addiction medicine. Mm-hmm. So I started working in addiction medicine clinics, all kinds of clinics. I have had all kinds of experiences. It's been amazing, because I'm working directly with the nervous system, and one that is very sensitive is used to using substances to numb and escape pain. And so the process to stop doing that is very much all about trauma, because it's very easy to overwhelm a system that's used to just escaping everything. And it's like, no, I need you to stay present with me. It's like, nope. This is too uncomfortable. I'm going to go back into my escape. So I learned so much about the body and the nervous system when it comes to stored trauma. And here's what I discovered was that there is a lot of work that needs to be done. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. And as we've already kind of made reference to, it will require the mind and the body and the biology. But when I was working with my patients, I needed to figure out what was the fastest way to shift them to a safer place, a safer inner state. Because until I helped them do that, everything was useless. Mm-hmm. Whatever I prescribed was going to be useless. Mm-hmm. So I needed the fastest way to shift their inner state to one of safety. And what I found through lots of experimenting and trying different things was the fastest way was creating a different felt sensation using somatic work. So somatic, soma, soma is a Latin word that we are exposed to in medical school. Soma is the word for body. So it's
That tries to make us sound smart. We could just say body, but we got to say soma because we sound much cooler if we do.
Right? Like we're still needing to prove ourselves that we're intelligent in order to be worth something. So
Okay.
the body based is going to be more effective than cognitive based. And that's another myth that we need to bust is that, oh, if you have trauma, the solution is go to a therapist and talk about it. No, please no. Actually, what needs to happen is you find someone, or again, you go through a course like mine where I teach you these skills to go through the body, where you are making a way for your body to start to feel safer.
Yeah.
When I lead people through my 21-day journey, so I eventually landed on 21 specific and different exercises and in a very specific sequence that I would teach my patients so that they could progressively learn these tools and have that shift. 21 days, they started experiencing 26% decrease in daily physical pain. 30% decrease in their depression, 30% decrease in anxiety, 28% decrease in fatigue, 28% decrease in their GI symptoms and their sleep issues, all at the same time. And I'm looking at these results cool. And I'm like, I have never been able to prescribe a medicine that did all of these things in 21 days that promotes health that doesn't have serious side effects.
It's unbelievable. And there is something, right? If I recall, to the 21 days, like as far as regenerating neural pathways and changing the way that your brain responds to something takes about 21 days, right? I know when I did hypnosis, I had to listen to this recording for 21 days, every single day for 21 days. And there was a reason behind that. And I have to say, totally worked.
Right.
Totally worked.
If you do something for a day, your body's like, well, that was cool, but it's not going to record it as this is what we do every day.
Yeah.
And knowing that our brain and our nervous system are always working to make life easier for us. Thank you, brain.
Yes.
They're always working to make life easier. So whatever we continue to do, it will make into a habit.
Love it.
That serves us really well when we're on the healing journey and we're doing things every day that we want to make into a habit, like healthy eating and movement and those kinds of things. But what happens if since childhood, we have felt lost and we have felt alone? And maybe for some people like me, like what I used to do, I used to automatically go to the refrigerator.
Yeah.
What can I eat to make this feeling that I'm lost and alone go away so I don't have to feel it, so I can focus on work, so I can focus on socializing, so I can focus on the other things in life and not have this noise so loud. And that became a habit for me because I had done it so many times. And so by the time I actually realized what I was doing, it had become so unconscious that I didn't even know that I was eating for emotional reasons. I thought that I was eating because I'm hungry.
Yeah.
No. And that's it's the beauty and the wisdom of the body and the brain is that it will make meaning of things and it will convince us that this is why we're doing something in order to protect us from the truth of you're kind of messed up. You're carrying a lot of pain. And if you were to see that, you'd feel even worse about yourself. So I'm going to make something up like, oh, I'm hungry right now. In fact, I'll even create a little bit of, physical hunger sensation for you so that you have no idea that you're actually just feeling an emotional void.
Yeah. Mine is control. So like when I feel lost, I start micromanaging everything. I start cleaning the refrigerator. I start organizing the closets. I start and to an extent, like, I think sometimes it's relaxing for me, like organizing my closet may be a whole weekend thing where it's more of a relaxing thing. But like when I get frantic about it, that's where I had to catch myself and say, wait a minute, Why am I trying to fill my soul with every little task that I literally don't have to do? And it's funny because Maria over here on Facebook put a comment in saying, when I face a traumatic situation, I make myself very busy with a list of to-dos, projects, and over a couple days or week, my body comes to accept the situation and helps me feel in control. But I'm wondering, is that a distraction for Maria? Because it is for me. I don't know, right? Like, is that a distraction of the brain saying, I'm going to give you a bunch of things to do so you just don't have to think about this right now? Is that the right tactic? Or is it, like, I kind of use it as a signal for me where I'm like, okay, why am I so worried about a dish in the sink, or why my son left his shoes in the middle of the kitchen, although I'll never quite understand that. Or one shoe in the, I should say one shoe in the kitchen and one shoe like hidden in a closet behind something or under a couch or something. And somehow the two shoes ended up halfway across the house. Is that stuff that is good for me to do when I'm feeling overwhelmed and lost? Or is that something that's a distraction and I need to train my brain to not do that?
The technicalities of what are we actually supposed to do? I'm gonna tell you what to do. And I lay it out in my book because, again, this is another myth that needs to be busted. Where there's, I want to say that, the busyness is bad. Not necessarily. Sometimes, and sometimes not. And I even don't like to use the word bad anymore because it's, right? Like, is it helping me become who I want to be, or is this not helping me become who I want to be? And so as we look at the stress response, that is our key time to be able to do something. If we don't do certain things in the stress response, we are going to go into the trauma response. And that's what makes us sick. That's what shuts us down. So that's what we want to, as much as possible, avoid and learn, what do I need to do in this stress response? And here's the key. I'll just say it very simply, which is we have to take action when we are stressed. And what does that look like? That means that if I notice that there's a danger, a problem, a challenge, if I don't take action immediately, then my body interprets that as, this is too big for us. I should shut down in order to try to survive this. And so when I have done everything that I can do for a problem, then that is when I'm like, okay, I've done what I can do. If the problem is not still over, that is when it can be very helpful to do things like organizing my house, cleaning this, going on a jog, doing some exercise. Why? Because I am trying to stay out of the immobilization that is the trauma response. And one thing that I would really want people to understand about the stress response is this aspect of the adrenaline. Adrenaline is very damaging to our tissues. It's what has been associated with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue because of the damage to the tissues and our cells.
The inflammatory response is insane. Yeah.
And so what needs to happen is the discharge of adrenaline needs to happen. And how we discharge adrenaline is through movement. So dancing, when I move my muscles, it uses up that adrenaline. If I go still, if I paralyze, if I sit on the couch and just ruminate, I'm not discharging that adrenaline. And that's what causes a lot of the downstream problems. So this is where I come to what, like the activity and the busyness. It can actually be a good thing if you have already dealt with the problem and done everything that you can. If you're using the busyness to avoid that, well, then now this is a trauma response and you're using that as an escape.
Yeah. It's the intention behind it. Yeah.
Yeah. It really does come down to, like most things, right? Like, what's driving this? Is this coming from a place of empowerment, or is this coming from a place of fear?
Yeah. We have a few more minutes with you. So you guys, I wanted to let you know we're on the tail end. So if you've been holding on to that question and you're like, I don't know, this is the time. We've actually caught up with questions. I think we had a comment, missed your sessions from the past few months due to a tight schedule. Well, nice to have you back. Welcome back. We like having you here. That's great. If you guys do have more questions, start throwing them out, because I know you guys tend to ask them all like in the last 2 minutes, which is very stressful and traumatic. And I just want, we don't want to do that. I was thinking of something while we were talking about that question and how we kind of become busy. We just watched last night the final finale of Severance. Have you watched Severance on Apple TV? About how they segment the brain. They put something in the brain that segments you into two people, and most people do it because of traumatic events. So essentially, it's very complicated. I won't bore you with it, but it was very interesting in regards to this conversation, because they've got this outie who lives in the real world, and then they've got this innie who goes to work, and in work it has its own life. So there's its own life inside the building and outside the building, and then they start to realize that it's better to integrate and work together. This is probably a perfect show for you. I have no doubt the theme is about trauma and integrating parts of our life. But I mean, I personally found myself completely confused the whole time and kept asking, what is that? I don't get that. I don't understand. My husband and my son were like, Mom, that's the innie talking to the outie. I'm like, oh, okay. For me, it was a little difficult, but it was just so interesting, because the fact that a show like that comes out, you know, appealing to people when we're talking about escaping with substances, escaping from our reality, or wanting to disconnect from our reality so much in our common times, because we're literally just inundated by information all the time. And we can't even have the brain power to decipher what's real, what isn't. And that's traumatic in itself, especially if there's stuff that hasn't been worked on. And I think that the work that you do is so incredibly amazing. And what all of us do in this space, where we're looking at connecting the mind and the body, is the future of medicine, and has to be. Otherwise, we're all going to be severed. We're all going to be living these two separate lives. And for anyone who's seen that show, you'll know what I'm talking about. Maybe. Literally, I was like, wait, who's that? Anyway. But I want you to talk about your book coming up and where they can find you. And then all of you listening, if you have any further last minute questions, this is the time. Start writing them, like throw them down quick, because, and it can be for me or Dr. Aimie, although trauma is one of my favorite subjects, so I'm going to keep it there, but throw them out right now. So tell us about your book, which can be pre-ordered right now, and where they can find you. And on Instagram, on Facebook, where they can follow you, because everybody needs to do this. Everybody needs to think about this aspect.
Yeah. So the Biology of Trauma book, there is a huge story behind that. It was harder than what I expected.
I wrote a book. I hear you.
I have this all in my brain. I teach these in my courses. I thought, oh, this will be easy. I just need to, lay it out for how I teach. And then no, like that wasn't working. It wasn't coming together. I literally rewrote that book 7 different times, like start to finish. Like the whole aspect of, you take all of the papers and you throw them in the trash and you burn them, and then you start from scratch 7 different times for me.
Yes. So I was a good year of rewrites. I hear you.
Yeah. Because I obsess about making this information understandable. Yeah. Accessible. I have given up with trying to change the system in terms of the conventional medical system. That is not who I'm writing this book for. Mm-hmm. So I obsess over making it understandable and accessible for the people who need this information about how trauma is actually stored in their body and what they can do about it. And so the book, for those who know Gabor Mate, he wrote the foreword, and it is available as pre-order. In fact, Amazon right now is having a sale on it. So this is the least expensive that you will ever be able to buy this book. I couldn't believe the price that they had put on Amazon. I'm like, what? My book is worth a lot more than But with that, they can also get onto my insider circle. So they can find me over at biologyoftrauma.com. They can also find me on my social media platforms with Dr. Aimie. Of course, I spell my name a little differently. So just make sure that it's Dr. Aimie with Biology of Trauma. And then they can join me for the Insider Circle, where I am doing monthly readings live until the book comes out, so that people can start to get a taste of it. And I also have many bonuses that they can get when they pre-order, and they'll find all of that in the Insider Circle on biologyoftrauma.com.
Yay. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to read it. So I'm snatching it on Amazon for sure. But this has been such a wonderful session. And for those of you, I want to invite you. I hope that you'll come on my YouTube show, What Am I Modeling? Because I think we can dive into so much about how we put that pressure and perfectionism on ourselves based on past traumas and nervous system dysregulation. And I would love to invite you to be there. I think it would be a fantastic conversation. I have no doubt that my audience here would agree. For those of you who do check out that channel, there is an episode dropping in 5 minutes as well with Dr. Betsy. So check that out as well. But Dr. Aimie, please come be a guest on my show, because I want to be able to dive into this in so much more detail and really get into it. You are such a wonderful, by the way, friend, person. I love your mission. I love what you do. I've loved being able to get to know you, and you are absolutely changing the face of health. And so I'm honored to know you. So thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, well, thank you for what you were doing.
Like
we're in this together to change the future of medicine.
Whoop, whoop. Let's do it. Let's do it. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for showing up today. And Dr. Aimie, go have an absolutely wonderful weekend.